Did you know that more people now get their news online than from any other source? MainWebNews.com covers the current events forming the trends of tomorrow. Experience the future of Maine News today at MainWebNews.com.
A movie this summer called Don't Tread on Me has raised awareness of the 10th Amendment state sovereignty movement in America. The issue was national news again last week when a state referendum passed 70% to 30% to reject the federal health insurance mandate. There is a large appetite right now for sovereignty within the individual states. After all, this is the United States of America, not the federal government of America. Today on Maine Web News, we're going to take an in-depth look on the 10th Amendment state sovereignty issue in Maine and America.
And now, Maine Web News.
Contrary to the spin sometimes put out in the mainstream media, the state sovereignty 10th Amendment movement is not about having states secede from the Union. What is behind the movement is a simple idea that local control is the best way to ensure that the will of the citizens is represented in the government.
The 10th Amendment is very important, and I think we're seeing it around the country that many states are saying enough is enough. The federal government is trying to nationalize our existence, and we need to push back. There was some good reasons why we have the 10th Amendment, and that's to have sovereignty for each individual states. And if it's not given to the federal government, it belongs to the states, and the states need to stand up and take it back. As governor, I will be pushing back against the federal government.
The 10th Amendment being a very important topic of discussion in this year's gubernatorial debate, one that should have been rightfully a topic of discussion for years now, and possibly we wouldn't be in this pickle we're in here in our national government. Honestly, the 10th Amendment is one of many, and the idea enshrined in the 10th Amendment is that states have individual sovereignty rights. Those powers not directly delegated to the national or federal government are reserved for the states and the citizens of the states. I believe in that strongly. Firmly, there's a commitment on my behalf to protect that right. What I would caution is we don't go headlong into an expectation that that right will start to be respected and materialized for us under the leadership of national political parties. What we really need to do is look at an independent candidate such as myself who wants to embrace the voter, because it is the voter and the voter alone who I believe will help us in advancing, in rebirthing that 10th Amendment to be what it is and what it should be in our political form of government here in the United States.
Maine has a strong tradition of standing up for our state sovereignty. I was very proud a few years ago when our state senators voted 36-0 to reject the federal Real ID mandate. Mainers have also rejected the federal prohibition on marijuana. We've decided that it's okay for our citizens to use it for medicinal purposes. A lot of other states are coming up with some really good ideas of new ways to stand up for their state sovereignty.
HJR 88 literally enumerates many of the infractions that have been made by the federal government, and basically says that from the time of its enacting, from the time that our Missouri State Constitution would be amended as a result of the passage and then voter approval of House Joint Resolution 88, that the state of Missouri would never again be compelled to adhere to or even recognize any law that comes from the federal government that is not constitutional.
The federal government has no constitutional authority to dictate policy to the states, except for in a few enumerated instances. However, the federal government is currently in a habit of coercing the states into obedience by bribing them. They take our money through taxes, then, for example, they threaten to not give us back our own money to fix highways unless we obey them. One way out of this trap is to simply stop giving our money to the federal government in the first place, and that is an idea that's catching on. Several states are now creating federal tax escrow accounts from which they will pay federal taxes only if they choose to, which protects the interest of the citizens.
The Federal Tax Escrow Account really has two parts to it. It has first the aspect of it in which it is directing certain federal taxes to be paid to and through the state treasury, and then the state will pass that federal tax on to the federal government, the IRS, will say. And let's say it's the federal income tax. People start paying their federal income tax to the state treasurer instead of the IRS, and then the state treasury will then pass it on to the federal government. So one of the proposals, and one of the proposals that we have here in Oklahoma and some other states have, is to try to get control over that ability that they have to print money, give it out, and then take it back or hold it back. So putting teeth in the 10th Amendment and in the Constitution, one of those solutions is to require those federal funds in the form of taxes, some of them or all of them, to be paid through the state.
Federal tax receipts that are gathered on individuals in the state of Kansas and on corporations that do business in the state of Kansas would, instead of sending those directly to the IRS, would instead send them to the Kansas Department of Revenue. What they would look at is the proportion of federal spending that satisfies enumerated powers and what percentage does not. Whatever percentage does not satisfy enumerated powers, the state of Kansas will utilize to satisfy unfunded mandates on the part of the federal government. Whatever's left over goes back to the people of Kansas.
Everyone in the 10th Amendment state sovereignty movement agrees on one thing. You have to have a supportive governor in order for the 10th Amendment state sovereignty movement to have any effect in your particular state. We know that Paul LePage and Kevin Scott are both strong on state sovereignty. The other candidates did not respond to a request to participate in this piece, but we do know that Libby Mitchell did vote to reject the federal mandate for the Real ID.
I would push very, very strongly for our sovereignty, for the sovereignty of the Maine people. Many of the laws and regulations that come down from Washington are truly unconstitutional if ever challenged. The problem is they put the almighty dollar in front of it, and if you don't abide by it, you won't get federal dollars. Frankly, I believe that the state of Maine is entitled only to the federal dollars, to the monies that come out of Maine and go into the federal coffers. That amount of money should be coming back. And frankly, it should be coming back in the form of infrastructural monies. As far as education, as far as health care, those are all things that should be left in the state. And I agree with a lot of governors that have said that they would fight back and push back on health care.
Going in depth on the issues that matter at the polls this fall, this is Jared LeBlanc with Maine Web News.
Experience the future of Maine News today at mainewebnews.com.